In a quiet little neighborhood where everything seemed picture perfect, there lived a person named Alex Thompson. Alex had just moved into their dream home after months of searching for the perfect place to settle down. The house wasn't grand or luxurious. It was modest, cozy, and full of potential. What made it special were the small touches Alex added. Fresh coats of paint on the walls, colorful flower beds in the front yard, and cheerful potted plants lining the porch. Every weekend, you could find Alex outside, watering the flowers or trimming the hedges, humming along to music playing softly from a portable speaker. The neighborhood itself looked like something out of a postcard. Rows of neatly kept houses stood side by side, each with its own charm. There was a sense of order here, lawns trimmed to perfection, driveways free of clutter, and mailboxes aligned so precisely it almost felt intentional. Residents prided themselves on maintaining this standard, following guidelines set by the Homeowners Association, HOA. But while most people followed these rules without much fuss, one resident took them far too seriously. Her name was Karen Wilson, and she was infamous around the block. If the HOA had a face, it would be hers. Clutching her trusty clipboard, Karen prowled the streets like a hawk, scanning every corner for violations. No detail escaped her watchful eye. Not even a single weed poking through someone's sidewalk crack. To Karen, enforcing the rules wasn't just a responsibility. It was her life's mission. She believed that keeping the neighborhood pristine was what held society together. At least, that's what she told anyone who dared question her methods. Karen's reputation preceded her. Newcomers to the area quickly learned about her obsession with regulations. Some found her antics amusing, others annoying, but no one dared cross her path unless absolutely necessary. So when Alex first arrived, they heard whispers about Karen during welcome chats with neighbors. "Just don't give her any reason to knock on your door," one neighbor advised with a chuckle. At the time, Alex thought nothing of it. After all, how bad could things really get? But fate has a way of testing people's patience. Not long after Alex settled in, strange things started happening. First came the letters. Formal notices slipped under their door, citing minor infractions Alex didn't even know existed. Too many potted plants. Mailbox not aligned correctly. These accusations seemed petty at best, but Karen presented them as serious offenses. When Alex attended their first HOA meeting to clear up the confusion, Karen greeted them with a tight smile and an endless list of complaints. Her tone was polite yet patronizing, as if speaking to a child who needed guidance. Despite feeling frustrated, Alex tried to stay calm. They figured it was better to play along than provoke someone like Karen. Little did they know, this was only the beginning. As days turned into weeks, Karen's behavior grew more invasive. She lingered near Alex's property longer than necessary, jotting notes in her clipboard whenever she passed by. Neighbors whispered warnings, saying Karen was known for escalating conflicts until people either caved or left altogether. For now, Alex chose to ignore the tension, focusing instead on making their new house feel like home. But deep down, they couldn't shake the feeling that trouble was brewing. And Karen Wilson was at the center of it. The first real clash between Alex and Karen began on a crisp Saturday morning. Alex had spent the entire week adjusting their property to meet the HOA's demands, even though they privately thought the rules were ridiculous. They removed a few potted plants from the porch, repainted the mailbox in a neutral shade, and meticulously aligned it with the curb using a measuring tape. It felt like overkill, but Alex hoped it would finally put an end to Karen's complaints. After all, they just wanted to live peacefully in their new home. But Karen wasn't satisfied. That morning, as Alex was enjoying a cup of coffee on the front steps, they noticed her marching down the street with her clipboard in hand. Her heels clicked against the pavement, and her expression was one of steely determination. When she reached Alex's driveway, she stopped abruptly, scanning the yard with narrowed eyes. Alex sighed inwardly, bracing themselves for whatever was coming next. "Good morning," Alex said politely, forcing a smile. "Is there something I can help you with?" Karen barely acknowledged the greeting. Instead, she pointed to the flower bed near the porch. "These flowers are too bright," she declared matter-of-factly. "They disrupt the visual cohesion of the neighborhood." Alex blinked, unsure if they'd heard correctly. "Too bright. They're just flowers." Karen shook her head firmly. "It's not about the flowers themselves. It's about maintaining consistency. Your choices stand out in a way that draws unnecessary attention. We have standards here, and everyone needs to adhere to them." Feeling a mix of disbelief and frustration, Alex tried to reason with her. "I understand the importance of keeping things neat, but isn't this a bit excessive? My garden doesn't harm anyone." Karen crossed her arms, her tone sharpening. "Excessive? You clearly don't understand how these things work. One person slacks off, and suddenly everyone starts doing whatever they want. Before you know it, the whole neighborhood falls apart." The conversation went downhill from there. No matter what Alex said, Karen countered with increasingly absurd arguments. By the time she left, dropping another formal notice into Alex's hands, they felt drained. The note cited yet another violation. Apparently, the color of their curtains was too bold and needed to be changed within 7 days. As the days passed, Karen's behavior grew more intrusive. She started showing up at odd hours, inspecting Alex's property with a level of scrutiny that bordered on obsessive. Once, Alex caught her peeking over the fence while they were planting new shrubs in the backyard. Another time, she knocked on the door late in the evening to complain about the placement of holiday decorations. Decorations Alex hadn't even put up yet. What truly baffled Alex was how quickly other neighbors distanced themselves. At first, a few had offered sympathetic smiles or whispered words of encouragement, telling Alex to just ignore her. But as Karen continued her campaign, those same neighbors became quieter, avoiding eye contact whenever Alex passed by. It was as if they feared being associated with someone Karen deemed problematic. Things reached a boiling point when Alex hosted a small gathering one weekend. A couple of friends had come over to help repaint the living room, a project Alex had been putting off for weeks. They laughed and chatted as they worked, enjoying each other's company. But later that evening, Karen appeared at the door, her face flushed with indignation. "I receive reports of loud noises and unauthorized visitors," she announced, pointing accusingly at the group. "This is a family-oriented community, and such behavior is unacceptable." Alex stared at her, incredulous. "We're just painting the walls. How is that disruptive?" Karen didn't back down. "Rules are rules. If you can't follow them, maybe this neighborhood isn't the right fit for you." That night, as Alex closed the door behind Karen, they felt a wave of anger unlike anything they'd experienced before. For weeks, they had tried to stay calm and cooperative, hoping to avoid conflict. But now, it was clear that Karen wasn't going to stop. Not unless someone stood up to her. As they looked around at their half-painted walls and tired but supportive friends, Alex realized something important. They weren't going to let Karen dictate how they lived their life. Whatever happened next, they would face it head-on. As the days turned into weeks, Karen's behavior escalated in ways that left Alex both bewildered and increasingly frustrated. What had started as nitpicking over minor details, like flower colors or mailbox alignment, morphed into something far more invasive. It wasn't just about enforcing rules anymore. It felt personal, as if Karen had singled Alex out for some unknown reason. Her presence loomed larger than ever, casting a shadow over what should have been a peaceful new chapter in Alex's life. One of the most unsettling developments was Karen's habit of parking her car across the street from Alex's house at odd hours. At first, Alex thought it was coincidence. Perhaps she was visiting another neighbor, or simply taking a break during her patrols. But soon, they began noticing patterns. Karen would sit in her car for long stretches, binoculars in hand, peering intently at their property. Once, Alex spotted her snapping photos of the backyard garden from behind the fence. When confronted, Karen dismissed the act with casual arrogance. "I'm documenting potential violations," she explained without a hint of remorse. "There are rumors your landscaping doesn't comply with HOA guidelines." Alex couldn't believe what they were hearing. "Rumors? From who? And why do you need pictures of my private yard?" Karen shrugged, as if the question was irrelevant. "It's standard procedure. You'll understand once you've lived here longer." The phrase "standard procedure" became Karen's go-to justification for nearly everything she did. Whether it was showing up unannounced to inspect Alex's driveway or leaving passive-aggressive notes about the placement of outdoor furniture, she always claimed she was just doing her job. But to Alex, it felt less like enforcement and more like harassment. Things took an even stranger turn when Karen accused Alex of hosting illegal gatherings. The accusation came after a perfectly innocent afternoon when a few friends helped Alex paint the fence. They worked quietly, chatting and laughing as they transformed the weathered wood into something fresh and vibrant. There was no loud music, no rowdy behavior, just a group of people enjoying each other's company while completing a task. Yet somehow, Karen interpreted this as grounds for suspicion. When she appeared later that evening, clipboard in hand, Alex braced themselves for another confrontation. "Illegal gathering," Alex repeated, incredulous. "We were painting the fence. That's all." Karen's expression remained stern. Multiple reports suggest otherwise. Large groups congregating on private property raise concerns about noise levels and safety. Reports? From whom? Alex demanded. "Nobody complained except you." Karen didn't respond directly. Instead, she handed Alex yet another formal notice, citing vague infractions like excessive social activity and disruption of neighborhood harmony. By now, Alex had amassed a small stack of these notices, each one more absurd than the last. What made matters worse was the ripple effect Karen's actions had on the rest of the neighborhood. Neighbors who had initially offered sympathy began avoiding Alex altogether. Some avoided making eye contact when passing by, while others whispered behind closed doors, clearly intimidated by Karen's influence. Alex couldn't blame them entirely. Karen wielded an enormous amount of power through the HOA, and crossing her could mean fines, penalties, or even legal trouble. Still, the isolation stung. Moving to a new neighborhood was supposed to be exciting, not alienating. Despite the mounting pressure, Alex refused to let Karen dictate how they lived their life. They continued tending to their garden, hanging cheerful decorations, and inviting friends over when they pleased. Each act of defiance, no matter how small, felt like reclaiming a piece of their independence. But as tensions simmered, Alex couldn't shake the feeling that Karen was far from done meddling. One fateful morning, Alex woke up to find Karen standing in their living room, as bold as brass, sipping coffee from a mug she'd apparently helped herself to. The sight was so surreal that for a moment, Alex thought they were dreaming. How had Karen gotten inside? Why was she acting like she owned the place? This latest intrusion crossed a line Alex hadn't anticipated, turning what had been a battle of wills into something far more serious. As shock gave way to anger, Alex realized this wasn't just about rules or regulations anymore. It was about boundaries. And Karen had just shattered every single one. The moment Alex walked through their front door and saw Karen standing in the living room, coffee mug in hand, time seemed to freeze. For a split second, Alex thought they were hallucinating. Surely, this couldn't be real. But there she was, calm as could be, sipping from a mug that clearly belonged to Alex. The audacity of it all left Alex speechless, their mind racing to process what was happening. What are you doing in my house?" Alex finally managed to stammer, their voice trembling with disbelief. Karen turned to face them, her expression almost bored, as if being inside someone else's home without permission was the most normal thing in the world. "Oh, good, you're back," she said casually, setting the mug down on the coffee table. "I let myself in to inspect the interior. I've been getting complaints about unauthorized renovations." "Unauthorized renovations?" Alex repeated, their voice rising. "You broke into my house." Karen waved a dismissive hand. "It's not breaking in if I'm here on official HOA business. Besides, your door was unlocked." Alex stared at her, their jaw dropping. "That doesn't make it okay. You can't just walk into someone's home whenever you feel like it." Karen didn't seem fazed by Alex's outrage. If anything, she looked annoyed, as though Alex was overreacting to something trivial. "Look, I'm only trying to ensure compliance with community standards. People have reported seeing changes inside your house. New paint, furniture rearrangements, and we need to verify everything aligns with HOA guidelines." At this point, Alex felt a mix of emotions bubbling inside them: anger, disbelief, and even fear. How had things escalated to this? What kind of person thought it was acceptable to barge into someone's private space under the guise of inspecting it? But before Alex could respond, they realized they needed evidence. This wasn't just an argument anymore. It was trespassing, plain and simple. Grabbing their phone, Alex quickly snapped several photos of Karen standing in their living room. Each click of the camera seemed to irritate Karen further, but Alex didn't care. "You're trespassing," they said firmly, holding up the phone. "I'm documenting this for the police." For the first time since entering the house, Karen's confident demeanor faltered. Her eyes widened slightly, and she took a step back. "The police. This is ridiculous. I'm just doing my job." "No, you're violating my rights." Alex shot back, their voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through them. "You don't get to decide when or where you can enter my home. Now, get out." Karen hesitated, clearly weighing her options. She opened her mouth as if to argue, but must have realized how bad the situation looked because she grabbed her clipboard and stormed toward the door. Before leaving, she shot Alex a glare. "This isn't over," she hissed before disappearing down the driveway. Shaken but determined, Alex immediately called the police. When officers arrived, Alex explained the situation, showing them the photos and describing Karen's behavior over the past weeks. The officers listened intently, jotting down notes and examining the scene. They assured Alex that trespassing was a serious offense and promised to investigate further. Word spread quickly through the neighborhood about what had happened. Neighbors who had previously kept their distance started approaching Alex, some offering apologies for staying silent, while others expressed shock at Karen's actions. Even those who had once feared crossing Karen couldn't ignore the fact that she had gone too far this time. As the day wore on, Alex felt a mix of relief and lingering unease. On one hand, they had stood up to Karen in the most extreme way possible, proving that her antics wouldn't go unchallenged. On the other hand, the invasion of their privacy left them feeling violated and anxious. Would Karen retaliate? Could they ever truly feel safe in their own home again? Despite these questions, Alex knew one thing for certain: they weren't backing down. This wasn't just about defending their property. It was about drawing a line and refusing to let anyone cross it. As evening fell, Alex locked every door and window, double-checking each one to make sure Karen couldn't pull another stunt. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but for now, Alex allowed themselves a small sense of victory. Karen had finally pushed too far, and everyone, including Alex, was about to see the consequences. The days following Karen's trespassing incident quickly turned into a whirlwind of legal drama and community tension. After filing a formal police report, Alex found themselves at the center of an unexpected storm. The officers took the matter seriously, especially after reviewing the photos Alex had taken and hearing detailed accounts of Karen's escalating behavior over the past months. What started as a neighborhood dispute had now become a criminal case. Karen, for her part, seemed blindsided by the gravity of the situation. When questioned by the police, she initially tried to downplay her actions, insisting that she was merely fulfilling her duties as an HOA representative. But as the investigation unfolded, it became clear that her defense wouldn't hold water. Trespassing laws were black and white, and no amount of rule-enforcing rhetoric could justify entering someone's home without permission. To make matters worse, other neighbors began coming forward with their own stories about Karen's intrusive behavior. Some shared instances where she had shown up uninvited at their homes under the pretense of inspections, while others recounted how she had intimidated them into compliance with baseless threats. The HOA board, which had long tolerated, or perhaps even enabled, Karen's antics, suddenly found itself in an uncomfortable spotlight. Members scrambled to distance themselves from her, issuing public statements condemning her actions and promising reforms within the organization. Behind closed doors, heated discussions erupted about whether Karen should retain her leadership position. For years, she had been their most vocal advocate, but now her unchecked behavior threatened to tarnish the entire association's reputation. Meanwhile, Alex became something of a reluctant hero in the neighborhood. People who had once avoided them out of fear of Karen's wrath now approached them with words of support. Some admitted they had wanted to speak out against Karen before, but didn't have the courage. Others thanked Alex for standing up to her when no one else would. Though Alex appreciated the solidarity, they couldn't help feeling drained by the whole ordeal. Dealing with Karen had consumed so much of their time and energy, leaving little room for anything else. As news of the legal proceedings spread, Karen's carefully constructed facade began to crumble. Faced with charges of trespassing and harassment, she hired a lawyer and attempted to defend herself in court. However, her arguments fell flat. The judge ruled that Karen must stay away from Alex's property and imposed a restraining order barring her from contacting them directly or indirectly. Additionally, the HOA levied hefty fines against her for misconduct, citing violations of its own code of conduct. For Karen, the fallout was devastating. Her once unshakable confidence shattered as friends and allies distanced themselves. Neighbors who had previously feared her now openly criticized her behavior, calling her tactics abusive and unnecessary. Even members of the HOA board, who had once relied on her obsessive dedication, voted unanimously to remove her from her leadership role. It was a humiliating defeat for someone who had prided herself on control and authority. Despite the victory, Alex struggled to move past the emotional toll of the experience. The constant surveillance, the invasive accusations, and the ultimate breach of their privacy had left scars. They installed additional locks on their doors and invested in security cameras, not because they expected Karen to return, but because they needed to feel safe again. Sleep didn't come easily, and every strange noise outside made them uneasy. Still, amidst the lingering anxiety, there were moments of hope. One evening, as Alex sat on their porch watching the sunset, a neighbor named Clara approached with a plate of homemade cookies. "I just wanted to say thank you," Clara said softly. "You've inspired all of us to stand up for ourselves. We should have done it sooner." Alex smiled, touched by the gesture. "It wasn't easy," they admitted, "but I realized that if I didn't fight back, things would never change." Clara nodded. "Well, we're here for you now. You're not alone anymore." In that moment, Alex felt a glimmer of peace. While the battle with Karen had been exhausting, it had also sparked something powerful, a sense of unity among neighbors who had long lived in silence. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting warm hues across the sky, Alex allowed themselves to believe that brighter days lay ahead. The neighborhood might never be perfect, but it was finally starting to feel like home. The weeks following Karen's downfall marked a turning point for the neighborhood. What had once been a community divided by fear and compliance began to transform into something stronger, more united, and undeniably hopeful. Inspired by Alex's courage, neighbors who had long endured Karen's overreach decided it was time to reclaim their voices. For years, many had quietly resented her tactics but felt powerless to challenge her. Now, emboldened by Alex's example, they came together to demand change, not just within the HOA, but in how they interacted with one another. It started with small acts of defiance. Neighbors stopped tiptoeing around Karen's rules, planting colorful flowers in their yards or painting their front doors bold shades that reflected their personalities. Others hosted weekend barbecues and block parties, openly celebrating the very social activities Karen had deemed disruptive. At first, these gestures felt almost rebellious, as if they were testing the boundaries of what was allowed. But soon, laughter and camaraderie replaced the tension that had hung over the streets for so long. The momentum grew when a group of residents organized a meeting to discuss reforms within the HOA. Attendance was higher than anyone expected, with nearly every household sending at least one representative. The room buzzed with energy as people shared stories about how Karen's reign had affected them. Some recounted feeling belittled during HOA meetings, while others described being too afraid to make even minor changes to their homes. It became clear that Karen wasn't just an inconvenience. She had created a culture of fear that stifled creativity and connection. With Karen no longer holding sway, the HOA board found itself forced to listen. Under pressure from the community, they agreed to rewrite outdated rules and establish clearer guidelines for enforcement. Gone were the days of nitpicking over flower colors or mailbox alignment. Instead, the focus shifted toward fostering a welcoming environment where individuality was celebrated rather than suppressed. A new committee was formed to ensure transparency and fairness, and volunteers stepped up to help mediate disputes instead of resorting to threats and fines. For Alex, watching this transformation unfold was both heartwarming and surreal. They had never set out to be a catalyst for change. They simply wanted to live peacefully in their home without interference. Yet here they were, surrounded by neighbors who treated them with gratitude and respect. One evening, as Alex tended to their garden, a young boy named Ethan approached shyly, clutching a handmade card. "My mom said you're really brave," he said, handing it over before running back to his parents. Inside the card was a simple message. Asterisk, thank you for standing up to the mean lady. Asterisk. Alex chuckled softly, touched by the gesture. It reminded them that sometimes bravery isn't about grand gestures. It's about refusing to stay silent when things aren't right. As the neighborhood healed, rumors circulated about Karen's whereabouts. She had quietly put her house on the market not long after the restraining order was issued, and it sold quickly. Some speculated she moved to another suburb, eager to start fresh elsewhere. Others claimed she attempted to join a different HOA, but was rejected after background checks revealed her history of conflict. Whether true or not, the story served as a reminder that actions have consequences, even for those who believe themselves untouchable. Life in the neighborhood slowly returned to normal, but it was a new kind of normal. Conversations between neighbors became warmer, less guarded. People waved hello as they passed each other on the street, lingering to chat about shared interests or upcoming events. The sense of isolation that had plagued Alex during their early days in the community dissolved, replaced by genuine connections. Still, Alex remained cautious. While they trusted that Karen wouldn't return, they knew better than to let their guard down completely. Installing security cameras and reinforcing locks had become second nature, a habit born of necessity rather than paranoia. But even these precautions couldn't dim the lightness they felt as they walked through their revitalized neighborhood, greeted by smiles instead of worried glances. One crisp autumn morning, as Alex watered their vibrant flower beds, they paused to take in the scene around them. Children played tag in the cul-de-sac, their laughter echoing through the air. Across the street, Clara and another neighbor worked together to hang string lights for an upcoming holiday gathering. The oppressive weight of Karen's presence was gone, replaced by a spirit of collaboration and joy. Months had passed since Karen's departure, and the neighborhood bore little resemblance to its former self. The once stifling atmosphere of fear and conformity had given way to a vibrant sense of community, where individuality thrived alongside cooperation. Alex's garden, which had been at the center of so many disputes, now stood as a symbol of resilience and beauty. Bursting with color and life, it drew compliments from neighbors who walked by, some even stopping to ask for gardening tips. It was no longer just Alex's sanctuary. It had become a source of inspiration for others. The changes extended beyond aesthetics. The HOA meetings, once dreaded gatherings dominated by Karen's sharp tone, and clipboard-wielding presence evolved into open discussions where everyone's voice mattered. Neighbors shared ideas about improving communal spaces, organizing events, and supporting one another in ways that strengthened their bonds. A new spirit of collaboration replaced the rigid enforcement of trivial rules. Instead of policing each other, people focused on lifting each other up. For the first time in years, the neighborhood truly felt like a place people were proud to call home. Alex found themselves playing an unexpected role in this transformation. While they never sought leadership or recognition, their actions had earned them respect and trust within the community. Neighbors often turned to them for advice, not just about dealing with minor conflicts, but also about how to maintain the positive momentum they'd worked so hard to build. Though Alex still preferred staying out of the spotlight, they couldn't deny the warmth they felt when someone thanked them for sparking change. One evening, as the sun dipped low on the horizon, the neighborhood came together for a potluck dinner in the park. Tables were laden with homemade dishes, and strings of twinkling lights cast a soft glow over the gathering. Laughter filled the air as children chased each other around while adults exchanged stories and laughter. At one point, Clara stood up, clinking her glass to get everyone's attention. "I just want to say something," she began, smiling warmly at the crowd. "This neighborhood has gone through a lot lately, and none of us would be here enjoying this moment if it weren't for Alex." She gestured toward Alex, who sat quietly, suddenly feeling self-conscious under the spotlight. "You reminded us all that standing up for ourselves doesn't mean tearing others down. It means creating space for kindness, fairness, and understanding. So thank you." The applause that followed was heartfelt and genuine, leaving Alex momentarily speechless. When they finally rose to speak, their words were simple yet powerful. "I didn't do this alone," they said, looking around at the faces of their neighbors. "We did it together. And I think that's what makes this place special now. Not the rules or the houses, but the people." As the night wore on, Alex reflected on how far they, and the entire neighborhood, had come. The scars of the past hadn't disappeared entirely. There were still moments when anxiety crept in, especially when hearing unfamiliar footsteps near their door. But those moments were fewer and farther between, overshadowed by the joy of living in a community that valued connection over control. In the months that followed, Alex continued nurturing their garden, adding new plants and experimenting with designs that reflected their personality. Visitors often remarked on how welcoming their home felt, a testament to the care and effort Alex poured into every detail. Yet what brought them the most pride wasn't the flowers or the neatly trimmed hedges. It was knowing that their courage had helped create a ripple effect of positivity throughout the neighborhood. Occasionally, rumors surfaced about Karen's whereabouts. Some claimed she tried to insert herself into another HOA but was swiftly rejected after her reputation preceded her. Others joked that she'd sworn off homeowners associations altogether and retreated to a secluded cabin in the woods. Whether true or not, these tales served as reminders of how much had changed, and how far the neighborhood had come since those tense early days. For Alex, the future looked brighter than ever. They no longer feared waking up to find Karen lurking outside their window or receiving absurd letters citing non-existent violations. Instead, they woke each morning to sunlight streaming through their curtains, birds chirping in the trees, and the comforting hum of a community thriving together. Their dream home had finally become everything they'd hoped for, a place of peace, belonging, and endless possibilities.